actually think the last one I did was with you when we did it first time round. Anyway, second time lucky. Obviously, since the budget, the last one wouldn't have been very relevant to bring out. So before we go into this podcast, Malcolm, who are you?
I'm Malcolm Webb. I'm the long-retired ex-head of Oil and Gas UK.
And what was life like before that, though?
Before Oil and Gas UK? Do you mean?
Yeah, before Oil and Gas, yeah.
Yeah, great. I've spent 50 years working in the oil and gas industry overall, and I've never regretted a day of it. I've loved it all. I think it's a fantastic industry, which has given so much to this country and could give so much more as well. So, yeah, I've loved my career. I feel very, very fortunate to have had it.
Where did you start anyway?
I started in 1974, which goes back some, doesn't it? I joined the Burma Oil Company. Yeah. I was so excited to join it at the time. I never saw this coming. I'm from a small town called Marlborough in Wiltshire, and Burma had moved their headquarters down to Swindon in Wiltshire. And as luck would have it, I ended up joining them as a legal assistant with them. And then I got moved quite quickly into the North Sea business, which was tremendous, because if you think 1974, it was all going down then. Brett, Ninian, the pipeline system, so low. Feels like this all of it was going on, and I was involved in a lot of it. I loved it. Loved the work. Loved the importance of the work. I loved the contribution that it was making to the UK as well. I mean, it was transformational for the UK economy, the North Sea. Gas first down in the southern basin had helped hugely, but then the oil thing was something else, really. And it did transform the UK economy and brought huge prosperity to the country. Now,
if you look back on that time, though, what do you think stands out so much from that period than what's going on now?
Oh, the optimism and drive. The purpose, the understanding of the importance of oil and gas to the UK. In fact, I would say to the world, but certainly to the UK. And period of belief, huge investments going on, huge, great momentum, exciting times. Not everything was perfect, of course. If you go back and think about safety, I think we made a lot of mistakes in the early years, culminating in the dreadful disaster of Piper. But it's an industry that also learns all the time, in my experience. There was an honesty about it, and we learned from our mistakes, and we went on improving. It's just been a fantastic industry to work in. I do feel lucky, and I feel grateful to the industry.
Guys, I'm sorry to interrupt this show, and I really hope you're enjoying it. One thing I'm going to ask you, if you're listening to it and you're not liking, following or subscribing to it, could I ask a massive favour that you do? It really helps the show, it helps me bring in more people, and it helps me get more stories out there, which in favour brings more stories back in. Let's get back to it. Well, if you look at hindsight now, do you think the industry underestimated how quickly the public and political sentiment would turn on it the way it is now?
That's a good question. Curiously, I think the answer is no, because I'm not sure that the public and government ever properly turned on. I don't think they really understood what was going on and, frankly, how important it was. In part, I think that's because quite a lot of what was going on was out of sight. It was out there in the North Sea. Nobody saw it going on. It wasn't in our communities as such. It was out there. And as far as the politicians were concerned, it was obviously great financial news for them, but I don't think they ever got their heads properly around what they could have done with that financial bonus. What they did with it was spend it, of course. They spent it like mad. Contrast Norway. I mean, Norway at least had the sense to say, look, this is a windfall. We never expected it. It's a huge bonus, so let's put half of it away and build up a wealth fund. We didn't. We spent the lot. Now, people say, oh, that's because, Norway's only got a population of 5 million and we've got a population of 60 million, and that's nonsense. The North Sea tax revenues were wholly unexpected in the scheme of things. And then suddenly there they were, and I say we spent it. We didn't put any away. Just like a drunken pools winner. Oh, well, it's not a pools winner these days, is it? It's a lottery winner. Off we went and spent the lot. That's a bit of a divergence from what you were saying. So, and
no, that's fine.
In a way, I don't think we ever really understood. And this sounds, I don't mean to be condescending in saying this, but I really don't think we understood the importance of the industry. And I still don't think we do today. But we clearly don't today. And our government certainly doesn't understand it.
Yeah, that leads us quite well into the budget. Obviously, we did this the first time round, pre-budget. There was a few speculating things between us, how it would go and whatnot. But now, obviously, the outcome was pretty much done and dusted. Where do we go from that one?
Well, further down, I'm afraid. I hate to say it because I hate being a Jonah, but I did predict this was going to happen. I predicted it some while ago. There's no way this Labour government is going to change in its antipathy towards oil and gas. And you have a Secretary of State at the moment who is, gleefully closing the industry down because he and his colleagues mistakenly believe that the future of energy definitely lies, and quite closely lies, somewhere else. Well, it doesn't. But the damage they're doing is immense. And I can't see it changing that. This is going to be very depressing. I can't see it changing in the next 3 years either. We've got 3 more years of this. What state the industry will be in by then, I don't know. I mean, look, the flight from the basin is incredible at the moment. Really, all the majors have gone. One might expect that in a mature basin, but I don't think not with this speed. And I said to somebody the other day, what's left now is a bit of a sort of a vulture sort of a community, really. What we're doing is we're picking over the carcasses of what's there. And there's an awful lot of, the tax accountants are having a field day. What people are doing is they're going out and trying to buy tax allowances and then utilising those to make more money, if you like, make more margin out of the older fields and doing fill-in work and the likes. It's very, very depressing. Very depressing. And the budget was a kick in the teeth, wasn't it? And they didn't need to deliver it either, because this line that it was too expensive for them to do away with the EPL is obviously nonsense too as well, because as was disclosed afterwards, they had a budget surplus really going into that budget. They decided to increase it through extra taxation, but they definitely weren't up against it as far as doing something for the energy industry, for the oil and gas industry. But they decided not to, because it fits within their narrative, which I think they honestly believe that within a few years we really won't need much oil and gas. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. But they firmly believe it. Post say 2030, we won't need very much. Not right, but that's where they are, and therefore the industry was ignored. What worse than ignored was sort of kicked.
Yeah, well, it was already down.
Yeah.
And
a lot of jobs and the loss of opportunity is terrible. And the effect upon a town like city, rather like Aberdeen, that's awful too as well. I've got a lot of friends in Aberdeen and around there. I shudder to think what's the property market like in Aberdeen these days, for goodness sake, for example. Terrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrible.
Yeah, I don't think Rachel Reeves' obviously recent statements, as we were speaking about just before coming in, has helped the situation with almost her ignorance to the fact that there is, thousands of jobs being lost. I don't think that's done her. I don't think she was anyone's favourite up this neck of the woods anyway prior, but I don't think it's made her any more popular.
No, and these are high quality jobs that are being lost too, as well.
Yeah.
You know, these are well paid, tax paying good jobs, and they're being needlessly destroyed in order, well, not in order to, but with the result that we're just going to be importing more oil and gas that doesn't employ UK people, doesn't pay UK taxes, and only adds to our balance at trade deficit. It's absolute lunacy. It is real lunacy. And then maintaining this EPL, a tax which I think in design is terrible, that you have a tax that comes along and skims off the cream whenever you get there. For a high-risk industry like the oil and gas industry, that principle is dreadful. Actually, I think it's dreadful for any industry. But furthermore, that EPL is destroying tax revenues. It's a bad tax. It's bad in its design. It's a perfect example of the Laffer curve operating. You know, the higher you get towards 100% in tax, the less tax you raise. Well, that's true. That's what's happening. It's, very, very, very depressing. Sorry, I can't.
Yeah, I think when you... No, I know. It's difficult, is it? It is quite difficult. And you can see it right across LinkedIn at the moment, with posts and people, you know, saying they've been made redundant after however many years at companies. And I think it's a sad reality of the time, obviously. And then, you know, it goes in line with, you know, the kind of political situation in the UK as well. You know, unemployment obviously rising. And obviously I know the Bank of England interest rates have been brought down, which is obviously a bit of good news amongst a poor storm, should we say. But yeah, I think it's the EPL ultimately was brought in for, you know, I guess it was a knee-jerk reaction during COVID. They needed to reclaim all the furlough money that they'd been handing out left, right and centre. And I'm sure its intention in that run were last minute. I don't think there was any positive or proper thinking into it. But, you know, there was a huge opportunity for maybe Labour to win back a bit of popularity, because I don't think they've done very well recently, especially with this side of the world up here, and get rid of it. And that was the perfect budget to do it, especially considering there was a surplus. That's the worst thing about it, is it doesn't make sense that there was a surplus and you'd already, you know, you were doing a good job of knocking the arse out of an industry, so to speak, and that was an opportunity to kind of, you know, put a bit of a positive spin on it.
I agree, but I hate to say this, but I think they took the calculation that there weren't a lot of votes for them to be lost in this. And I think they probably also take the view there are too many votes to be lost in being nasty to oil companies. And that's something that our industry has to accept some responsibility for too as well. I'm not sure that we've ever projected ourselves in the correct way. We've never really explained the importance of our industry. We've just gone about our business very diligently. We are an industry that's run by engineers, damn good engineers, and engineers want to get on and do their work and get on with their business and do it effectively and efficiently. And they're not so much into all the sort of what you might call the puffer end it. But it goes back to where we started with this conversation. I don't think the industry has done enough to explain how important it is to modern life and how important it is to this nation. We've never really got that message over. We tried at Oil and Gas UK for quite a while to do that, and I think we made some inroads. But you know, you needed to keep on with it, and unfortunately, we didn't. What happened with Oil and Gas UK was it went all net zero-y. And lost its those, you know, crumbs.
Yeah, but I think that was always apparent at Oil and Gas UK. Even with social media side of things, oil and gas. Sorry, not oil and gas. I mean, just oil and gas in general, especially in the UK. There wasn't a big kind of, you know, push to, you know, put it out there. You know, social media was a big no pictures and all that kind of stuff, which I can understand, obviously. But at the same time, if you're trying and spin and put something in a positive light, sometimes it does help if it comes from the people that are, you know, working within it, trying to post a bit of work. But I was actually just on a job there where I was speaking to a captain who came from the dredging prior to doing what he was doing now, and he said they were the same dredging. They just don't want the world to know about what they're doing, and sometimes they prefer being kept in the shadow because
It's
keeps them out of the public eye. Yeah, it's less hassle at the end of the day. So I think that's probably the similar way in which oil and gas has come from.
Of course, if you think about it, Joe, if we had gone more Norwegian, I don't mean in the state ownership structure, by the way, but if we'd gone more Norwegian and set up a wealth fund, then actually the people of this country could have seen and benefited from that wealth fund. We never did that, actually. I mean, that wasn't for the industry to do. That was really for the government to do. Maybe the industry could have encouraged it a bit more, and maybe that was never going to happen. But the North Sea has passed by, and it's sort of now I don't think it's over forever. I think it will come back. But for now, it's really on its knees, and what's to show for it? If you're an ordinary bloke in the street, what's to show for it? Not very much at all, frankly. And that's maybe another tragedy of the North Sea oil experience.
One of the things you have said is the North Sea is facing a premature death. Now, obviously, with this budget and the policy direction, I take it that's not changed your mind one bit, especially from what we've spoken about prior anyway.
No. I first wrote about this a couple of years ago, and I'm warned that was what was in prospect, and nothing has improved since then. In fact, it's got much worse. So I think that premature death is now accelerating. Now, I really do fear for what the industry will be like in 3 years' time.
It's difficult because if it does get too bad, it's incredibly hard to kickstart it back up. I know in New Zealand, obviously, they put a drilling ban on a few years back. They've obviously turned that back around and realised that was never going to work. And I know a boy who's actually gone over there working for a service company. But he says it's almost a bit like starting from the ground again when you're there. It's like they've got no equipment or anything then. And I think a lot of people nowadays know it's not just a case of showing up and, with a drilling rig and just pumping a couple of holes in the ground and that's it. It's all the kind of the work that goes into it, the engineering, logistics, supply chains, everything that goes into it prior to that to kind of get these things back and going. Now, if you've, say, your jackups and whatnot have all left the North Sea and gone elsewhere, you can't just start banging out a couple of jackets in the yard and throwing them offshore again to start drilling holes. And I think that's one of the things is you've got to be, there's got to be a bit of foresight here from them that say their whole thing doesn't work out because, we still don't know where we're going with renewables and whatnot. I read a thing the other day in Scotland now. I think they're opening up, I can't mind how many it is, I want to say 10 data centres or so. And an expert's come out and said, but we can't power them. We don't have the power source for them.
We could come around to renewables a bit later. I've got a very distinct view on it. I think it's a total blind alley we're going down, but that's by the by. But what you're saying about how you regenerate the industry is huge.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You can't just hope for the best that even if a new government comes in and goes, we'll just start the oil industry again. Oh yeah, okay, but with what? Everyone's left.
Precisely, the people have gone, the supply chain's gone, rebuilding, and the investors have gone largely. I mean, there's a few stalwarts still in there, playing a very difficult game, but they've largely gone. So you've got to attract those investors back, and you've got to start building up the supply chain again, and importantly, the very skilled people that work in that supply chain, because our supply chain is hugely, skilled, proficient, and very, very technical. And that you can't just click your fingers and that comes back. So if we get to ground zero, and I think we might get to near ground zero, the government of the day is going to have to do an awful lot of things to attract, firstly, the investors back to provide the capital to do anything, and then to help the industry get up off its knees again. So the idea that, it'll be okay, we'll just scrap the EPL and we'll open licensing is going to do it is delusional. You think you're going to need to do an awful lot more than that. You're going to have to overcome the terrible reputation the UK's got. It's almost a banana republic, frankly, in terms of its treatment of tax and regulation in this country. You're going to have to overcome that and demonstrate that you've understood the problems, you've understood the mistakes, and that the future is going to be this. I think they're going to have to put in some guarantees, a bit like they put it on the decommissioning relief deeds, some guarantees that they won't screw the industry on tax. They're going to have to. Who's going to trust them otherwise, given the history? So it's going to take an immense effort. And the other just depressing thing is that how much more infrastructure is going to be gone in 3 years' time? How many more fields are going to go in the next 3 or 5 years? And coming back, we won't be able to recover, I'm pretty sure, as much as we could have done if we carried on in steady state and not hurt the industry in this way. We just won't recover as much ultimately from the offshore. I say the offshore, I think the other thing, with time, and here's another prediction, we'll have to revisit the onshore. Yeah. We don't quite know what we're sitting on the onshore. We know there's a vast amount of gas there. We don't know how producible it is because we've not been allowed to explore or properly appraise it. But that'll have to come back as well. But again, if the government thinks that just by saying, opening the gates and sort of saying, oh, you're welcome to come in, is going to work, it isn't going to work. It's going to take a tremendous amount of effort. There we are.
Renewables then.
Could be done.
Oh yeah, well it has to be. I think it will have to be eventually.
I think the energy realities of it will dictate that it happens.
I often think, about 10 years from now, after the whole mad obsession with what we're doing now, and you're going to kind of stand there and whatever situation we're in, and then someone, and obviously we're going to have to go back to kind of pulling our finger out of our arse when it comes to our energy sector. I wonder how many people will turn around and go and say, flipping hell, why do we put ourselves in this mess?
Yeah, I don't think history is going to judge our current crop of politicians, and I don't mean just Labour, by the way. I mean the lot before me as well.
Yeah, I think it's
going to judge them at all well.
No.
But I guess the answer is, well, yeah, let's learn from our mistakes. We must learn from our mistakes. In the future, let's do it differently. So you could say, well, there is some, it's difficult to say this, there's some value in the awfulness of what's going on now, because at least that teaches us not what to do. And we've got to adopt a different attitude going forward.
Renewables then. You wanted to come back to that. My view is I do think they have their place. I do. I don't think you can use them as a base load for energy. I do think, that's in my opinion, that's going to be either nuclear or oil and gas. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to that, but personally, intermittent energy is the most ideal, especially in countries like Scotland, for example. Okay, yeah, it is windy most of the year round, but there's not much sun, so solar's the greatest of things. But also when it's not windy, you're kind of up shit creek, so to speak, because of the way that the grid's aligned to the different wind farms and that. But yes, I do think it has. I do think it has its place. Yeah.
I think. Look, I'm going to agree. Not try and agree with. I'm going to agree with you. I think our energy policy going forward has to be, "Oh, come all you faithful." It has to be inclusive.
Yes.
This nonsense about writing out an energy supply like oil and gas it's stupid. It's really stupid. And I agree with you. There's probably a role, I think it's a relatively marginal one, for highly intermittent sources like solar and wind. I also think, though, how unfortunately over-reliance on these intermittent sources is causing all sorts of problems. And let's step back one piece too as well. Let us not forget that these products only act to the electrification, the electricity side of the energy equation, really, which I agree is a very important one. But I think, as you just said earlier, these intermittent sources of energy, wind and solar, are no good for powering a flipping AI
data center.
That's got massive energy demands, and it has to be constantly supplied. I mean, and therefore you do, as you quite correctly said, you need masses of base load. And we're moving away from a period where we had masses of base load. And our nuclear is declining. The government's doing some window dressing stuff about new nuclear. It should be much bolder about that, frankly. Mm-hmm. The coal's gone. And the gas is being, badly treated. How do we put it?
Yeah.
It's so stupid, it's untrue. But there we are. Our leaders have been persuaded that the future lies in free wind and free solar. In fact, they're hugely expensive. And what energy policy should all be about is finding for this country, and please let's stop trying to save the planet, because we can't do it. In an event, we're irrelevant as far as we're totally irrelevant.
Especially when you compare it to China.
We need something that's cheap, abundant, and reliable. And I'm afraid renewables don't sort any of that.
No, I do agree on that. I think as a base load, and from what I've seen and my experiences alone, obviously it's my own opinion, and I'm not the cleverest boy in the world to come out and say it or know enough about it. But from what I've experienced and what I've seen, I just can't see it being a designated base load. I personally just can't.
No, but what its proponents will tell you as well, though, is, oh, no, this intermittency doesn't matter. Because when you're producing it in abundance, you stick it into batteries, or you produce hydrogen through electrolysis with it, and then maybe turn that into ammonia, and you can use that in some other way. Both of those options are colossally expensive. I know they can point to the fact that the price per unit of battery space has gone down a lot, but if you try and back up the whole of the UK electricity supply for the days when the wind doesn't blow and the nights when the sun doesn't shine, the sums are just colossal. I mean, it's cloud cuckoo land. You need something else.
Yeah. No, you need the baseload. That's ultimately what you need.
Reliable, affordable baseload.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's what we've moved away from. We had it as, and I think there's problems in the design of the electricity supply as well. But that's a bit beyond me. But we've moved from an electricity system, which was reliant upon really coal, nuclear, and gas. They're all pretty stable. And the gas was doing the sort of bit of infilling along the top. And now we've got rid of the coal, the nuclear is declining, and we're just left with renewables and gas. Oh, and then bio and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which is, a lot of that's pretty filthy. I think Drax is a scandal, an absolute national scandal. But and it doesn't work. It really doesn't work. It doesn't provide you with that reliable supply that you need. And that's just electricity. Oil and gas do so much more than that. Yeah. At least, if the government's got this plan to ban the sale of petrol cars by 2030, isn't it? Effectively.
Yeah, brand new ones, isn't it? Brand new petrol engines in there.
All of our home heating and industrial heating to electricity by some stage. So, it's going to be illegal to buy a gas boiler soon, isn't it? I mean, that's nonsense too. 90% of our homes or thereabouts are heated by gas. So you're going to throw all of that load onto this troubled electricity system too? Of course you're not. It's not going to happen. Sorry. No. I mean, this is getting a bit depressing, isn't it, really? But
no, I can try and shift the narrative.
I can imagine the people who take a different view are all screaming like mad at the fact.
Oh, it'll be raging. Oh, I know.
Bring it on.
But I think everyone's entitled to their own view of the whole thing, I guess. I guess we'll never really know until it kind of hits us. But in 2013, the UK, for some reason I put that stat down, was still relying on oil and gas for roughly 73% of its primary energy. When you consider the amount that we've now started importing from Norway, who are having an absolute field day off us, like, it must be brilliant to be Norwegian at the moment. Like, I read a thing the other day that they've now just opened licenses for this, someone like over 100 something brand new exploration wells or something like that, the same amount that they did 10 years ago or something.
And they largely don't need it. It's all for the export.
Yeah, the whole export. I think some of the biggest, most of their energy for the country comes from like hydro.
I
think hydro's their biggest.
Neighbours, and then a bit of nuclear, I think, but their neighbours also supply them with stuff off nuclear too, as well.
Yeah, so they are making an absolute fortune, and I think Germany obviously will start going their way, and I think Germany will start being quite dependent on them soon enough as well for gas.
Well, remember, Germany is still using coal, and not just
exactly
coal, but pretty dirty lignite coal for 40% of his electricity supply.
Yeah, so I mean, but obviously, yeah, they've got to start, making it look like they're part of the net zero group. I'm going to be PG.
And they closed down their nuclear, eh?
Yeah.
We need to be careful where we take lessons from abroad too, as well, don't we? Runs.
But when you consider now just how much we're going to have to start importing, because obviously no new drilling licenses this year for exploration wells. Sorry, you're allowed to drill in already mature fields or established fields.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm actually saying this. I'm thinking this sounds absolutely ridiculous when you keep coming out with it. What continued decline though in the domestic production will actually mean for us?
What will it mean for us?
What does it mean in terms of?
I'll tell you what it means for us. It's quite simple. Hugely increased imports of oil and gas, hugely. Whereas we could have been producing. Let's admit it. The North Sea is a mature basin, but we could have been producing at least 50% of what we need. In fact, I think we could have done better than that if we'd really got inventive with the way that we were regulating and taxing it, but still, it's by the by. So we're going to have hugely increased imports, massive loss of jobs, huge loss of tax revenue, because none of this imported stuff pays any UK production taxes or any of that stuff. And as I said before, a worse balance of payments. But, what's not to like about that? Right? I mean, it really is brilliant. When you sit back and think about it, you think, well, who would ever run their lives or run their own life like that? Nobody would. Why are we doing it? Why are we cutting off our nose to spite our face?
What do you think? You see the Shell Equinor merger with this new company, Atura. What do you think the reason is behind that?
I think I can say these things now. When I was in Oil and Gas UK, I couldn't say anything about corporate incentives, really, because I was always on.
Interested in.
I had to be very political about that. I think it's part of Shell's retreat from the North Sea, and they're not alone, are they? They've all gone or going. I mean, they're all exiting, and they're finding an exit in the best way that they reasonably can. They're sort of covering their tracks nicely, and they're segueing out. They're taking lesser interest in joint ventures or even minority interest in them, or handing the whole thing over. Total has just done the same thing. BP. I don't know whether the new regime of BP might change things. I suspect not. The other reality we have to accept is that for major oil companies, the mature North Sea doesn't offer the same prospect materiality that they need in order to sort of get themselves excited. That's why they're off in other parts of the world. And as we know, that the oil and gas industry in the rest of the world is booming. Yeah. It's like Europe. But so the materiality is not there. So I think there was always probably going to be something of an exit of the majors. But what that should have produced was a big upsurge in the next layer down of oil companies, the entrepreneurial mid-sized companies and smaller companies for that matter, coming in and dealing with operations that are material for them, and on which they can make good returns and they can go on developing their businesses. You saw that to a degree in the sort of the shallow Gulf of Mexico. That's what happened there. The majors opened it up, but then they left and smaller companies came in. And that's what should have happened in the North Sea. Instead of which the majors are leaving and nothing much else is coming in. Because what are they coming in for? They're coming into a basin that's hugely overtaxed and won't let them explore or appraise. And is putting all sorts of restrictions around everything they do. So, and into a basin that's got a government, or she's got a dreadful reputation for its political instability. And I do mean that. I mean, when you talk about the fiscal instability of the UK oil and gas province is terrible. It's, awful.
Yeah, it's actually a good point, actually.
I'm going around in circles, I think, really.
No, I know, but that's a good point, actually, about the shelf over in Gulf of Mexico. I actually remember I was working out there quite a while, about 10 years or so ago. And majority of the rigs there, none of them were big companies. They were like family-owned, some of them, and whatnot. And I thought it was actually a really good idea because obviously, yeah, you're kind of spreading the wealth, spreading the kind of competition and that.
Yeah.
Plus, you're keeping a basin which still has something left going.
Yeah,
I think it's a good idea. I did think
there's a whole load of little companies that go around in the decommissioning phase, take over the decommissioning responsibility, often leaving the cost of it to some degree with the people who were there before, but extending the life of the field as long as they can by getting the very last barrels out. And that's intricate, smallish stuff, and best dealt by nimble, small companies. I fear that we won't be doing that really in the UK. We'll end up decommissioning early and leaving quite a lot of oil and gas in the ground. And I think there's going to be, if you want another prediction from me, possibly don't, but I think decommissioning is going to be a mess too. I think it'll be a political mess and it could be a commercial mess as well.
Really?
Oh, I think so.
Why?
Well, let me tell you what the political mess will be. One of the things I was proudest of that we did at Oil and Gas UK was get the decommissioning relief deeds. And to explain, the industry had a terrible problem, really. Goes back to government. The government would not allow any deduction for tax for any provision that you made for your ultimate decommissioning costs. And they said, no, you're only going to get relief for your decommissioning costs as and when you abandon the field and decommission it. And why do they say that? Because they wanted to maximize their near-term cash flows. Because if they'd allowed that deduction up front, then their cash flows would have been somewhat less. And we kept on saying to them, wait a minute, well, what if you change the tax regime? And then you deny these reliefs at the end of the piece. That would be terrible. And eventually we prevailed. I was amazed when we did, by the way, but we prevailed. And they said, no, we'll do you, get this, the decommissioning relief deeds, which are effectively a contract for difference, such that, so it's a commercial contract with the government, such that if a subsequent government does try to screw you by, I don't know, abolishing the tax so you can't get any reliefs from it, you've got a claim under this decommissioning relief deed. I thought it was a great breakthrough. So that means that companies could be assured that the tax relief will eventually come through. Now, but still remember the fact that relief is going to come through at the end of the life of the field, when all the activity is over. So believe you me, the Treasury is soon going to stop what's already doing. It's going to start writing out very large checks for decommissioning relief at the same time that the North Sea is going into this steep decline. So the North Sea is going to turn from being a producer of wealth to a big hole, really, which the government's going to be seen to be pouring money down. Now, you can just see what fun some politicians are going to have with that, can't you? I can see the headlines now.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that now as well.
It is also all a construct of their own making, because if they'd said, okay, we accept what you're saying, if you make provision and you put money aside into a special fund to cover the decommissioning costs, you can deduct that you can take that as a deduction against tax now. What we'd have had in the North Sea is a whole load of piles of, funds, secure funds to deal with this decommissioning cost, and there wouldn't have been a big drag down upon the government funds at the end of the life of the field. But we haven't got that. So I can just see for the political noise that's going to come, I'm pretty confident the decommissioning relief deeds will stand up and will do their job, but I can still see the scream that's going to happen there. The other problem is that also, I don't think there are sufficient field-based security arrangements in place, partly because of this lack of any impetus to put, decommissioning funds in. A number of security arrangements have been put in place, largely by the sellers of interest. When they were selling it on to another company, they would demand that company posted security and entered into a decommissioning security arrangement. But it's pretty patchy. And my fear is, and I've got no real hard evidence on this, but I think I'm possibly right. My fear is there's going to be quite a lot of default around that. And then the government will fall back on something else it's got in the legislation, which is the right to make any company that's ever been ever in a field, no matter what the size of its interest, responsible for the whole of the decommissioning cost. Now, who's that aimed at? Well, that's aimed at the majors, because the majors have been in about 80% of everything that's ever gone on. Mm-hmm. So I can see that if you have a sort of default situation on this and the decommissioning isn't being properly dealt with, that the government may look to activate that power and make the majors responsible for it. Then I think all sorts of things will kick off.
Yeah, because if you actually look at it, of the super majors that are left in it, it's only really Total that's got its actual it's only skin in the game, really, and they're obviously I don't know how much longer they stay, but then you wonder if they're all out and the government goes chasing them, I don't think they've really got a chance to in the grand scheme, do you really? I mean, I was reading things. Yeah.
Well, I think for some they will. Some won't have escaped the jurisdiction. God knows how this is going to go down in an American court against an American company, however. I'm not too sure I have to go down. But think about it. If they do use this and they go against the major who for some time had a 10% interest in this field, and they say, we're going to pay for all the decommissioning costs of it now, that major or that company is then going to start turning around and suing everybody else who ever had an interest in that field for contributions on it. Yeah, like lawyers praise, but and again, I hate to say this, but this is all down to weak regulation. The regulators should have sorted this out as it went through. That there should have been these decommissioning funds in place, which should have been fiscally efficient and allowed deduction, and could be relied upon then to come in and deal with this. Instead of which, I've got my fears that it could go wrong. We shall see.
Does what's happening at the moment remind you of any previous boom or bust cycles that you've experienced?
No, nothing like this. Can't believe anything. Okay. I mean, we've had our upsets. I mean, we had the huge tax hikes under both Labour and Tory, which before now we've been able to get corrected after a time, and sometimes relatively quickly. I remember when we set up the oilfield allowances with Gordon Brown to undo some of the damage that had been done by the previous Labour tax hike, and with George Osborne, who hit the industry, we eventually got all of that undone, and we got decommissioning relief deeds as well. But this time, because the industry is so much weaker, and the hit, frankly, is as hard as anything that's ever been done. No, I've not seen anything quite as desperate as this before. I think it's unprecedented. I really can't think of it. And it's also, of course, to do with the fact that we're dealing with, and I can say this, given my age, we're dealing with a very mature body here. The North Sea needed care and attention. It didn't need to be kicked all around the place. It needed some nurturing. And it's got completely the reverse. So no, I'm not seeing anything as bad as this.
If we move more into the people side of things now, do you think the understanding, obviously, I mean, Westminster, well, we clearly don't have an understanding, but what do you think the public respect is for the offshore workers nowadays? And how much has it changed from the early days, considering it was obviously this brand new world, back in the 60s, 70s, even the 80s to some extent. But what do you kind of think how much has that changed their public perception of them?
I don't think it's changed an awful lot, but I hate to say this. I go back to what I said before. The offshore oil and gas industry is largely out of sight, and it is therefore out of mind. And I don't think people understand the brilliance of it. I don't think they understand the brilliance of the skills and the people that are working on it, and the hardship that they go through in order to produce this oil and gas 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. They don't understand it. They turn the light on and they don't think about what led to that. Or they get in their car and drive it around complaining about the price of petrol, which of course is about 60 or 70% tax.
Yeah. If
you take the tax off, there was an oil company, it was Merco many years ago, who decided as a wheeze for a weekend to take the tax and VAT off its petrol. Caused traffic chaos everywhere.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You can imagine how much cheaper the petrol is.
I can imagine. Yeah. Yeah.
So I fear, for there's lots of reasons about this. I don't think, sadly and honestly, I don't think the general public's perception has changed a great deal, because it was never really that much switched on. Yeah, there was a period in the 1970s where there were lots of positive headlines coming through about the industry and what was going on in the North Sea and all these fantastic developments and the oil security that it was giving us, and the wealth that was flowing through as a result. That was quite good. But an understanding of the industry, an understanding of the people and what they do, I don't think it's ever been properly there. And that's the general public, and I'm afraid that's also true for our politicians, who, in my experience, are largely ignorant of what the industry is all about and what the people in it do, or how it even works.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's clear and obvious, though. That was actually one of the questions I was going to ask earlier. Do you think you have a clue about what's actually going on out there?
No. I mean, but that's not new. I mean, I won't name names because it's too embarrassing, really. But I once had to explain to an energy minister, a UK energy minister, the oil was not in large lakes underneath the North Sea. I'm not kidding. Now it was dreadful. It was embarrassing for him. It was a bit embarrassing for me, frankly, because luckily we were in a private room when he asked me this question: how do we get it out of the lakes? And I had to sort of explain it to him. It was a dreadful failure on the part of its civil servants, who, by the way, are the other villains in all of this. We keep on blaming the politicians, but the civil service and the way the industry has been regulated is also a huge, huge problem. And when you're talking about what you do next in the North Sea, you don't regulate it in the way that it's been done now. You really don't. Yeah. Do you remember the Wood Report about 2013 or so? And what came out of that was this idea that we should have a real professional regulator on oil and gas dedicated towards maximising the economic recovery of the UK's offshore oil and gas reserves. Well, the civil servants and the politicians got into that and completely corrupted it. Completely. And so now you've got, net zero put in there as a sort of concomitant obligation alongside MER. Well, MER is obviously not being pursued anymore. We're certainly not trying to do that anymore. And the professional regulator that they were supposedly creating has turned into the North Sea Transition Authority. God help us. Sorry. I do things now. I'm sort of free from the shackles of corporate responsibility. What a disaster.
If you could send a message to those that are working offshore at the moment, though, because I know there is quite a lot of worry amongst people. I think a lot of people do forget these are people that are reliant on this industry, and they have families that are relying on them bringing the bacon home, so to speak. What would you say? What would your message be to them?
I'm so terribly, terribly sorry. And I'll probably get shot for saying this too. I think if I was a young person in that industry, and by that young for me is anybody who's aged under 40, I would say look elsewhere, see what your options are. The oil and gas industry is booming in other parts of the world. You should think about getting out to secure your future and your family's future. Now, that's also dreadful news for the communities that are involved in this. And I think particularly to somewhere like Aberdeen.
Yes.
And I know people are going to accuse me of being a Cassandra and everything, but it's a tragedy what's happening. It's a tragedy and a scandal. The only thing I would say is that I am absolutely convinced that oil and gas is so important that eventually the industry will come back. The government will have to bring the industry back. As I said before, it'll have to work very hard at doing that, but it'll have to bring it back because sense will dawn, and we will need to produce such oil and gas as we can from our own resources. So I suppose the alternative, you could say, look, if you can box clever and stay around for the next 5 or 6 years, and something could come through.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That has to be, if you're thinking about hope, that's it. And I think they can have some hope. I mean, you might say things can't get much worse.
No,
I think they are going to get a bit worse because I think the industry is going to carry on sinking for a while. But eventually, sense must dawn and it must come back.
There is a bit of hope. I totally agree. That was actually my next question. You probably do say you've already answered it, to be honest. But I'm under the similar impression. I think it'll be a moment where we'll carry on with this push. I always said offshore wind, I think till 2030, I think they'll carry on pushing with it until they kind of realize, right, we can't just throw all our eggs in one basket. But I do see a turnaround. I do. I think 5 or 6 years. I think obviously we've got to ride the Labour wave. I can't see them ever coming back in again after this. Right across all kinds of political avenues of what they've done, I can't see them, recovering from this term. But I think in 2 or 3 years' time, whoever comes in, I think there'll be a lot of pressure on them and to fix the policy.
Yeah, I just hope they're paying proper attention and that they understand they're going to have to act quickly too as well. And they're going to have to change the whole direction of energy policy. It's a huge change. They need to scrap net zero. Scrap it. Get rid of it. Stop believing and stop trying to get this stupid idea of a government-led energy transition too as well. There's no energy transition going on. Well, at the margins there is, but what we're going to need is probably more of everything, apart from maybe much more renewables, but we are going to need more of everything.
Yes. Nuclear, I think nuclear as well.
Yeah. Nuclear is largely ignored, has not been given the encouragement that it needs. It's very half-hearted what the government's done there, and that is something it could do. It could encourage that. And we need to get back to an energy policy that is turning to the UK, as I said before, and is focused upon providing cheap, plentiful, reliable energy to the UK, which can then actually itself develop or redevelop itself as the leading developed industrial nation it is and should be, let alone taking advantage of the potential that AI can bring to us.
Yes.
And it is true that the future is a very energy intense future. And therefore we need to be doing everything that we can to increase our energy supply.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Finally, looking back on your career, is there anything that stands out as your proudest?
There's a lot, really. That I'm proud of, but it's partly because I've been proud of the teams I've worked in.
Yeah.
I don't know, it sounds sort of a bit soft, but it's true. I've worked with some magnificent people over my career, right from the start and right to the end. And I'm pleased to say that some of the people I started with, I'm still great friends with now. So what am I proud of? I'm proud of the industry, and I'm proud of the people in it, and proud of what they've done. And I'm proud that I played a very, very small part in that. Yeah, that's about it.
Oh, that's a good way to finish it, though, Malcolm. And thank you for coming on a second time round.
No. Well, I think you're quite right. The previous one, which we did before the budget, was completely
wouldn't be relevant.
No. It was great seeing you, Joe.